Editing Emily here. This is just a note to say that the video you're about to watch was actually filmed in May of 2023 and it is now August. So, very sorry it took forever to edit this, but here you go.
Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Emily, but you can call me Ems. Today I'm here to maybe pose the question and sort of answer it. Is Noro Kakigori worth the hype or worth the money? So Noro Kakigori and Noro in general is a very hyped up, popular luxury yarn in the knitting crochet yarn world. So I ended up getting 2 balls of Noro Kakigori to make a summer top. I require 2 balls because I am the plus size. So let's talk a little bit about what the cost is, the makeup of this yarn, and how much yarn you get. Please note everything is going to be in Canadian dollars because I'm Canadian. And if you hear the cat rustling, don't worry about it. He's found a bag and he loves garbage because he's a garbage man. So Noro is a very popular luxury yarn brand from Japan. Japan is quite a big knitting and crochet crowd out there. So it's not surprising that this would come from there. So the whole idea is that Noro is very inspired by nature. So this is by Eisaku Noro. Eisaku Noro creates asymmetric patterns and complex colors to mimic the beauty of nature that surrounds you, is their little blurb. So it says the fiber is hand selected and inspected by Master Eisaku Noro from the most reliable and ethical suppliers. Fibers are never treated with acids or harmful chemicals. They are gently spun to preserve original qualities and character. So the natural process is done with wabi-sabi, embraces natural imperfections. The harmony of nature, variation, and original character of the fibers are preserved and delivered into your hands. So when this is a cotton and silk yarn, so it's primarily cotton, the main body of the yarn is cotton. So you're going to see a lot of things like slubs, thickness and thinness. It's very loosely spun. It's like a single ply that has been pretty loosely spun around itself. And a lot of beautiful color shifts happen in a lot of different Noro yarns. So we're talking specifically about Noro Kakigori. Kakigori is like shaved ice. It's like a snow cone here, but it's a traditional Japanese dessert. So this is 50% cotton, 30% silk, 10% viscose, and 10% polyamide. I'm never sure how to say that. So this comes with 200 grams per ball, which is 600 meters. And it is a category 3 light or DK thereabouts yarn. It kind of does, some of the slubs are thicker and run more in the more worsted weight category, and some areas are much finer and fall even into almost a sock weight. But overall, the effect of the yarn is a category 3 DK weight. So this is $55 per ball for 200 grams. Now, one thing I started thinking about when I looked at this is most yarns are sold in 100-gram hanks or skeins. Most yarns are in that 100-gram area. So already this is falling into the issue of it seems much more expensive when it's right next to all these other yarns, right? You're seeing, oh, that's a $17 yarn. Why wouldn't I buy that $17 yarn? But to get the same amount of yarn, you need to buy 2 of them, right? So at $55, this ends up being about $25.50 per 100 grams. $25.50? No. 27, no. Yeah, $27.50. Sorry. This ends up being about $27.50 per 100 grams. So honestly, this for a luxury yarn is falling somewhere between most like factory made yarns such as Cascade that you may be aware of, or Barocco. So like Cascade and Barocco run in this like $10 to $20 range. And then you have hand dyed yarns, which in my area, hand dyed yarns run about $30 to $40 per skein, depending on the type of yarn. So this is really falling in the middle of this when it comes to cost wise. Now, what does it kind of look like? How does it work up? What is it like to work with? So I have worked with this now. I'm finishing up my first ball here, and I wanted to film this video while I still had a full ball so you could kind of see what it looks like in the ball. This is color number 1, which I believe is Naha. I want to say it's Naha. I might be wrong. But this is color number 1 for Noro Kakigori. I thought it was pretty subtle. However, Jay calls this dirty dishwater colored. So, you know, make of that what you will. So this is it in the ball or in the cake. And this is how it works out. I'm currently testing the unpolished set by Hans Design, Moa Blomqvist from Sweden. Sorry if I said your name wrong, Moa. That's about what I got for my Canadianness. So this is kind of a work in progress crop top in this yarn. You can see that there really is this subtle color shift going throughout. This particular yarn has a white cotton base, like a slightly off-white cotton base. And then the colors that are coming in are based on the colored silk that is being put in through the yarn. So it has a very subtle color shift, but when you bring it up close, you can see a lot of very tiny specks of color. So it's actually quite fun to work up because you're seeing all these colors come in, and it ends up having almost this like subtle striping effect. So you can kind of see right here, there's more orange, there's kind of more green, there's more purple over here. Things sort of lay themselves out. There's a little bit of pink over here. So the colors kind of pool together in certain areas, but they're all kind of interspersed. So they're not a strict stripe. It's more like this subtle shift. I feel like this colorway is the most subtle because there's other ones that are Noro Kakigori that are significantly less subtle. So such as there's one that is a purple where the base yarn is a purple cotton, and then there's other colors of that complement purple going throughout. So this is, it depends on how you feel about variegated yarns. They're pretty much like a self-striping and a variegated had a baby because it does pool, but not in such an intense way as a variegated might do, or in such an intense way that a self-striping might do, because it doesn't have solid stripes. They're not clear delineations between stripes, but more of a soft transition between them. So how does this yarn feel? Does it feel luxurious for a luxury yarn? I'm going to be honest, it doesn't. It feels nicer than like Bernat Handicraft or cotton, but it feels like cotton. It's not, the feel is not anything to write home about at all. It is very, this is specifically with Kakigori, by the way, because Noro Kakigori is the only one I've used from Noro. But when it comes to feel, it feels very dry and very rough in the hands, which a lot of people really like. They like that more rustic feel. Imagine like a rustic yarn such as Briggs & Little. That is a very rustic wool. A lot of people love rustic wool, and I love Briggs & Little as well. So this is what I would call a rustic cotton. It's not as painful to work with as like a cotton that you would use to make dishcloths. This is definitely much softer. It is more of a fashion yarn. It would be great for wearables rather than doing dishes. I would never make a dishcloth from this. Don't do it. That is a poor choice for a luxury yarn. So when it comes to this yarn, I think the big call for this yarn and the big reason people love it so much is this way that Eisaku Noto works with color. The way that the color portrays itself in the piece, the way that the piece drapes as well, because despite being a pretty cottony cotton, it does have a decent drape. So you can kind of see this is unblocked, but blocked it does move a lot better. And this is crochet, by the way, so crochet usually has a lot less drape than knitting. I did do a swatch of this with knitting, and I found it very, very drapey and lovely. That would be a great summer top. The knitting felt much smoother than the crochet does. This is a knit look crochet piece. So when it comes to the question of how it feels to work with, it is very drying on the hands. You will want lotion for sure, because I find personally that cotton sucks the oil out of my hands and makes my hands feel awful. As well, because it is a cotton and it's not very strongly spun, it is a single ply, not very strongly spun, it can very easily break. It doesn't like break if you're just knitting or crocheting as normal, but if you are incredibly tight and if you pull really hard on the ball to get your tension, it could potentially snap the yarn. It's not too bad to put on a new piece. They do kind of blend together really nicely. And it's pretty easy to work with it in that way. Despite that, one issue I did have was that the cotton, because it's so loosely wound, does want to stick to itself. So I had the beginning tail on this piece and I would keep crocheting and the yarn coming off the ball would get tangled in it and I'd have to spend time pulling it apart because the cotton fibers would rub together and almost felt themselves together much like a wool would. So I had to pull it apart. So eventually I had to weave in that end before I even finished that part of my piece. So that was a little bit annoying, especially since sometimes I like to use the ends to mark the beginning part of a project so I know what end I'm on. Sometimes I also like to leave them long to use for seaming up pieces of project. I would not do that with this yarn. I would use separate pieces of yarn to put it together. Another issue I had with this yarn that is very, very annoying to me because it is a luxury yarn is there were knots in it, like 2 pieces of yarn knotted together. Like I would expect that from a Bernat, from a Lion brand. I'd expect that from something that I can buy at Michael's, right? But this is from a local yarn store and it is a luxury yarn, but there were still these knots. So I ended up getting to a knot, realizing it was a knot, having to undo several stitches and then undo the knot and then connect my yarn as I usually would. This is very, very annoying when it says very luxury yarn at a luxury price. You're kind of SOL with that because you don't really have much choice, but it annoys me a lot because you actually lose a fair amount of yarn when you have to join because of a knot. And I don't really like that about this yarn when it comes to the luxury price point and what you're doing with it, right? So is this yarn worth it? I think this is where you're going to have to look at what you want from a yarn. I would say I'm probably not going to purchase Noro Kakigori again. I would be very open to trying Noro's other yarns. I know that the wool yarns are much more different in character, and I would be very open to trying those out. But I personally don't think I'll be giving Noro Kakigori another shot unless I was doing a very airy, summery piece that I really wanted this subtle color shift on. that is the big thing that I'm really loving. I'm loving the color shift. I love how it's coming out, and I'm probably going to love the final piece. But due to not enjoying the process of working with it as much, it's getting a little annoying. And I found there was different annoyances based on crochet and knitting. In knitting, because of the way it is spun, it would unspin as I'm knitting. So casting on meant that I had very delicate, less spun pieces that I'm trying to work into. Once you've worked them, they're very strong because they're all, the tension and tightness is coming, and the pressure is going all across the piece. So you don't have to worry as much about it. But when you're casting on and it's unwrapping itself from itself while you're casting on, you're getting some real worry. Whereas with crochet, because of the direction it's spun, it kept spinning tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. And I get a lot of, you can't really see it here, but here, there. It'll spin around itself a lot. Sometimes really tightly to the point where you have a big bunch coming into your hand and you'll have to just kind of pull it apart and really smooth it and pull it towards the ball and even out that tension between the yarn and your project and the ball. And that's a little bit annoying, but it also means that my crochet pieces are pretty strong, whereas my knitting pieces are kind of weak. And I'm not sure if this will ever be one that I go for again, personally. I just want to note as well, I am not a frequent purchaser of luxury yarns. I do love hand-dyed yarn. I get hand-dyed yarn, every so often, and I support local dyers, right? But that is a little luxury for myself that I know I'm going to love. When it comes to this sort of luxury yarn that I know a lot of people use as a regular stash item, I don't think it's for me. I personally purchased this yarn when I got a promotion at my work, and this was my little gift to myself of congratulations, you got it, and you're going to have this nice yarn to make something really fun and nice for yourself for the summer. And I think in the end, I'm going to love the finished piece, and the yarn itself is very beautiful, but personally, I don't think it's worth the money unless you really love this color and the way it works up. So that's it for today. Thank you guys so, hello. Strata agrees. You don't like it. Hey. No scream. Not allowed. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments down below if you have tried Noro Kakigori. What do you think of the yarn? Do you think it's worth the hype, or do you think it's worth the money? And also let me know in the comments below, have you tried any other Noro yarns, and comparing it to Kakigori, what do you think about it? Do you think they're really different, or do you think they're kind of similar and I might have the same problems with other yarns? But from me to you, and from this one to you, wishing you a great day and happy knitting. Bye, guys.